Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another week beyond the mic. John Clendenin, joined by my fellow host Carlos Zimmermann, co-host Justin Hardcastle, our producer, sitting in studio. A very exciting episode for you today, as we are going to react a little bit to what was Black Sunday yesterday in the college football landscape. Halfway through the season now, a lot of teams at 6 through 6 wins are now without a head coach.
Yeah.
Most notably Penn State without James Franklin. Talk a little bit about that, and then get into a very exciting interview that we have earlier today with a very good friend of ours that we will let you kind of intro in a little bit. But first, Carlos, we got up here yesterday to try to set everything up for the interview, and then that's when the news hit. James Franklin, a year after being a play away from a national championship and national title appearance, is out in Happy Valley. Just go ahead and get your thoughts on that right away.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the right move for Penn State. It's just tough. It's like you said, you are a play away from a national championship appearance, and then you come out this year 3-1.
3-0.
3-0. Yeah, even 3-0. And then you lose that game to Oregon, heartbreaker in overtime, and you're like, okay, it's a top 10 team in Oregon, who is now sitting number 8 in the country. We'll look at the polls here in a moment. But that happens, and then you lay that egg to UCLA. You lose to Nico, and by 5 points. So that was already a point where you're like, I don't know about this one, but maybe you gave him some grace because he was on the road in Big Ten play, which no matter what you say about it, playing on the road is tough in conference.
Well, and when you're flying across the country and you have an early game on Saturday, so really you're flying from Pennsylvania to LA, and then 2 days later you have to play a football game. It can be tough. Now that's what the Big Ten signed up for whenever they went cross country like this. But yes.
But then you come home and you're playing historically the cannon fodder of the Big Ten. You're playing Northwestern, a game at home where you're favored by more than 20 points. Mind you, you were also favored pretty high against UCLA on the road. Back-to-back games of being 20-point favorites. But then this home game against the guys from Evanston, Illinois, and you lose by 2. At that point, you get nothing but apathy from the donors and the fan base of Penn State. And that opening statement, this is just my personal opinion about his opening statement in the press conference, was weak. And I think that prompted the administration at Penn State to make a decision, and they cut him loose. And as we've seen this season so far in coaching firings, that usually doesn't pan out for the team that just fired their head coach. Oklahoma State, I'll use them as an example. They fired Mike Gundy, but they're still not clicking. So it's tough, but I think the right call by the Nittany Lions.
Well, it reminds me a lot of, and this is just because I'm close to that program, Texas A&M, when they let go of Jimbo Fisher. James Franklin is very similar to that Jimbo Fisher conversation, and I think a lot of people wanted to realize that with Jimbo, we kept on hearing the same excuses time and time again. And then eventually they lost games they weren't supposed to be losing for those reasons. And A&M said, you know what, we're just going to pay $75 million and just get out of it. We're going to have to pay the $75 million regardless. We're going to pay $75 million and try to get a head start on revamping this program than just sit here and let it continue to fall and not live up to expectations. And I think that's what people in Happy Valley saw. You know, James Franklin's buyout is $48 million. It's
a lot.
It's a lot of money. But nowadays, most of the time, there's the payment plan options. Now, Mark Stoops at Kentucky has the best agent in the world. Because Mark Stoops is getting paid almost $10 million a year to win 7 football games. And even when he doesn't, his buyout is $40 million due all at once within like 30 days of his firing. Kentucky doesn't have $40 million. Okay? Now, I think that this is going to affect a little bit of how Penn State and their alumni, or I say their alumni, their brass, their administration is going to vote when it comes to allowing the private equity money to influx into college football, which is a whole nother conversation that we're going to probably have to talk about down the line whenever that becomes more of a reality. But, I'm looking here, and just 30 minutes ago, Pat Kraft, a head athletic director at Penn State, said that, James Franklin's record in big games played a role in Penn State moving on from him. Kirk Cignetti has won more top 10 Big Ten games in the past 3 weeks than James Franklin won in the past 9 years. At some point, you're just not getting the job done. And I think that Penn State, watching A&M fire Jimbo, and then 2 years later be 6-0 in the driver's seat in the SEC because they brought in the right guy that was right for their culture and what they wanted to do, showed that firing does not always mean you're going to muddle for 3-4 years. With the way the transfer portal is now, with the way rev share is now, it is you can go and get the guys to influx into your program to make you a contender right away. And so, as tough as it is, I think that when we look at the head coaching jobs that are open, I think Penn State is a clear-cut number one right now. His firing, we live in a world where James Franklin got fired before Billy Napier got fired at Florida, which I do not foresee Billy being there much longer at Florida. As good as that Florida team is, and I watched them on Saturday night in person, they're a very talented team.
For a first half, they performed pretty good,
and then the better team pulled away.
They make adjustments,
and so DJ Lagway, he can throw the football, and I think if you get the right coach in there who can convince him to stay, that you have a good foundation to build on when the time comes. But yeah, right now Penn State is the clear-cut number one job. I think Arkansas is number 2. I know Bobby Petrino is going to try to put together a string of games to hold on to that position that he kind of orchestrated a coup. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in college football, that a guy orchestrates a coup to get a head coaching job by taking a coordinator job at a school that is desperate for the relevance that he brought them to. And then I think Oklahoma State's probably number 3, and after that, everything else is about the same.
I mean, yeah, everything else pretty much falls into place. You got to think other jobs that just opened up. UAB fired Trent Dilfer, which came as kind of a shock. Oregon State starts off winless, 0-7, so they fire Keys, and then I'm forgetting one. I think. Nope, I think that's it for the college ranks. Just came out half an hour ago on the NFL side with a rookie quarterback, firing him mid-season. The Tennessee Titans have let go of Brian Callahan after their 1-5 start and a lot of people are stunned by that, rightfully so, because, come on, you got a young offense and a defense that's still trying to mesh, but Tennessee and Amy Adams-Strunk say, nah, we're going to try something different.
All right, Carlos. There have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 starting quarterbacks, or 8 quarterbacks taken at number 1 since they were drafted in 2016. So 6 quarterbacks taken at number 1 since 2016. All right. 6 of those 8 had their head coach fired since then. We talked about it last week. The NFL has a quarterback development problem.
Yes.
I understand that you are frustrated with the way that things are going. But this is why I think that GMs should be tied to the length of their coach's contract. You need to be able to build a team up and show me you can build a team. That includes the coaching staff, right? I look at Chicago, all right? That guy's track record of hiring is terrible.
Yeah.
It took him lucking into the first overall pick with Caleb Williams to attract somebody like Ben Johnson to come here. And if Ben Johnson keeps losing, who's to say Ben Johnson doesn't get fired? So GMs, I think, don't get held as accountable as coaches when they are just as culpable in the struggles of a team.
I feel like that can attest across multiple sports.
Yes, absolutely.
NBA, Major League Baseball. Granted, MLB may be a little different just because of the length of the season, but still the concept and the point remains the same. So I'm sure we'll be able to delve into more of that coming up on next week's podcast. But since we're just so limited on time, we can dive into the AP Top 25 poll. Top 2 stay the same, Ohio State and Miami. On top, Ohio State got 50 first-place votes. Miami got 13. Well, you're wondering where the other 3 went. Well, that went to the Indiana Hoosiers, who picked up that 10-point win over Oregon. Basically flipped spots in the poll. Oregon just dropped 1 spot lower than Indiana was. But how about the Hoosiers? Number 3 team in the country. How about that? Yep. Aggies, the Fighting Aggies, right behind them at number 4. Ole Miss drops 1 to number 5. Bama up to 6. Texas Tech is up to 7 after their big home win over Kansas. Oregon drops to 8. I think that's a respectable spot. They're besides Alabama, the best of the one-loss teams, but I think on paper they're the best of the one-loss teams. Georgia and LSU each move up 1 spot, 9 and 10. So the SEC starting to find its way back into the top 10 of the AP Top 25 poll, with the CFP poll still 3 weeks away. Interesting top 10, and I think they have it right.
Yeah, man, it's hard for me with LSU there. You lost to the top 5 Ole Miss team on the road. I don't think you really have a statement victory, but I don't think a lot of these teams after 9 or really after 8 have a statement victory. I heard somebody talking about what that just because Penn State is 3-3 does not mean that Penn State win is not a good win for Oregon. Because at the time when you played them, they were number 3, right? Now they've had a tailspin. Drew Aller's out for the season. Penn State in Week 4 is going to be different than Penn State in Week 7.
Well, you can make the same argument for LSU and their road win at Clemson.
Yes.
Yeah. Who was the number 4 team in the country at the time.
So it's hard. I try not to I try to hold the same standard to where I look at teams. Sometimes I'm like, that LSU, they did have to go into a raucous Clemson team, but then the more I watch them, it's like it's just not a good team. And I think the only difference for that is Penn State lost Drew Aller.
Yeah.
Clemson is still perfectly healthy. But I think the story of the season so far is the Indiana Hoosiers. I was walking out of Kyle Field on Saturday night, and one of the guys on the staff, one of the security guards, was walking away, and he was like, "Yeah, man, we're going to be the number 3 team in the country." I said, "No, we're not. We're going to be number 4, and that's okay. But Indiana is going to jump up to 3. You don't just go into Autzen Stadium as a touchdown underdog and win by 2 scores." And that's what they did. So I think what we're looking at is that the top 3 are kind of their own group. Indiana versus Ohio State, going to be a real fun game.
They don't play each other
in the Big Ten Championship.
Oh, the Big Ten Championship, Sure.
I think A&M is kind of by itself a little bit, and then I think that next chunk of 5, Ole Miss through LSU, that's going to sort itself out.
It will.
Those SEC teams are going to beat up on each other, and if A&M continues to play the way that they are, one of those teams will face them in Atlanta. I think we're probably going to see 3 Big Ten teams. I think we're going to see 3 SEC teams. I think we're going to see Miami. I think we're going to see Texas Tech. And then I think Georgia Tech, Notre Dame may have a chance to sneak in. And South Florida versus Memphis. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Those two teams, they don't play in the regular season, but they're on a collision course in the AAC for that Group of 5 bid. So really, if I'm Tennessee, LSU, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Georgia, I'm really, really hoping that everything stays put, because I don't want to be that number 12 ranked team that gets left out for the Group of 5 champion.
Right, because Memphis still undefeated, 6-0. They're at the bottom, but let's roll through the rest of the top 25. Tennessee got 11, Georgia Tech 12, as we mentioned. Notre Dame, number 13. Oklahoma drops 8 spots to 14 after them losing the Red River rivalry to Texas. BYU is up 3, come from behind win over Arizona. That was a big one for the Cougars to just stay in the conversation. Missouri drops 2. I think that's respectable given Alabama went up 2. Missouri drops 2. Yep. I think that's very fair. Vanderbilt is up 3. Virginia up 1. South Florida moves up 5 with their big win over North Texas. I think that eliminates the Mean Green from that Group of 5 conversation. And then we got 5 newbies. Well, say newbies. A couple re-entered. USC is up to 20. I believe that's a re-entry, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Texas re-enters at number 21 with their win over OU. Memphis is up 1 spot to 22. Utah re-enters at 23. Cincinnati 24. Nebraska 25. Illinois, really the only team that was left out, but they were one of those that dropped, along with Michigan, Arizona State, Iowa State, and Florida State, all taking losses this weekend. So it's getting dicey, to say the least. I think everything there looks pretty solid. But again, my eyes on BYU kind of being that outlier from the Big 12 that could potentially sneak their way in. They do have to play Tech in a few weeks, and that will be telling.
Well, and how big is the Holy War going to be? BYU versus Utah.
This Saturday.
That's
a big one.
That's a top 25 matchup. BYU, if I go and I look at their schedule, haven't really played anybody. That's not a problem. You've beaten the teams that you're supposed to beat the way you're supposed to beat them when you're that.
Correct.
But Utah has that early test versus Texas Tech, and Lubbock. I saw somebody describe it. It's like if a hillbilly got $1 billion lotto ticket.
Yeah.
You can attest to that, Justin.
I've been to many games at Jones Field. I can attest. It is quite the environment, man. Texas Tech fans are built different.
But, so for them in that program to be on this run that they're on, I think it's good for the sport. I'm looking forward to, that BYU test in a couple weeks. That's going to be a tough one. But if you can handle that, you got a pretty good path to the CFP if you're able to chart the course. I don't want to mention Cliff Kingsbury's first season at the helm, but this is the best start for the Red Raiders since that time.
It is.
Since y'all had Baker Mayfield and Davis Webb. And, I just think that if you can do that and take care of business, not only are you going to have the opportunity to make the playoffs, you're going to have the opportunity to compete for a top 4 seed. Yeah. Now, A&M and Ole Miss, there's some work that you need help from others, because I don't think your resume is going to jump their resume if y'all both run the table and are undefeated conference champions. The SEC, I think maybe the top-end talent isn't as high. Now, granted, I think A&M looked better against Notre Dame than Miami did, and that was on the road. But I think that the SEC is a much deeper conference. I think the middle 10 is better than any other conference's middle 10.
Yeah.
We can debate all we want about the top 3 of each conference. I think when you're at this level of college football, they're all the same. Your top 3 on any given Sunday or Saturday can beat anybody else's top 3. So.
And I guess my only other thing I wanted to touch on the AP is that G5 bid. I mean, we've been talking a lot about South Florida and Memphis being the 2 on the collision course, but if one of them falters, UNLV still hanging around the votes.
Mm-hmm. And Washington.
And Washington, that is technically a group of 5 team. Well, Washington, they're Big Ten. But
sorry.
I'm
I
saying
thought they were
for-
Pac-12.
No.
That just shows you how
how convoluted it's gotten.
convoluted this has gotten. Navy is
the-
at 11. They have an opportunity if they beat Notre Dame to make a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
And
And say what you want about UNLV, the rest of UNLV's schedule. I think the only big one that stands out is that you have to go to Boise State this weekend, and Boise State's always a challenge. That blue field. They don't have to face San Diego State until potential Mountain West championship. So let's just say theoretically UNLV runs the table, wins the Mountain West championship, and either one of South Florida or Memphis falters at some point before the American. Don't be surprised if they start becoming a topic of conversation. Having seen that team in person when they played Sam Houston,
they're running.
They're running. Literally,
They're running Rebels.
Literally, well, it's their basketball team, but still the point still stands. And your coach is Dan Mullen.
Yep.
So
my only concern with that is, does Dan Mullen take a Power 5 job, Power 4 job?
I mean,
before the end of the season.
There's a
Because
couple options.
There's some that are open. And, if you're sitting there and you got some wins, I think that teams are going to come calling.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned Navy. Not only do we, support the troops here and be on the mic, but the midshipmen, don't look now, 6-0, have fought two hard-fought games against Air Force and then at Temple against Casey Keeler. And they got FIU this week, and then they're at North Texas, and then they have a stretch of at Notre Dame, home against South Florida, and at Memphis. So if you go 2-3 or 2-1 in those 3 games, and your loss is Notre Dame, you're in the playoff. Congratulations. If your loss is to South Florida or Memphis, it's going to get a little dicey. But if you are able to have the tiebreakers fall your way and you make the conference championship game and beat somebody and you're a champion and you have a win over Notre Dame and a win over either South Florida or Memphis and you're 11-1, I think that is going to push them into the playoffs. And that would be something that is awesome to see, is a service academy make the playoffs. That's why we have the expanded playoffs. As much of a headache as it is to, that we have teams that are from 16 going into the top 4 or whatever it is. That's why you expanded the playoffs, so teams like Navy, teams like Memphis, teams like South Florida who never have a seat at the table get the opportunity to showcase their program on national television.
I mean, we saw it last year with Boise State getting a bid, a bye, no less. And then, let's say Navy does all those things and they run the table. Congratulations, you get an SEC team in the first round. So whether that be probably either Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, or if Georgia creeps back up into that picture. So,
but
a lot to think about.
You have the number 1 rushing offense in the country.
It's true.
You're averaging 305 rushing yards a game. They are a team that is made, if you don't come out firing right away and you let them build up a little bit of a lead, it is very hard against those kind of teams to come back. Yeah. So Blake Horvath was a Heisman finalist last year. It's not like he can't take over a game in the triple option offense. So we are big Memphis and South Florida fans here on Beyond the Mic. But the midshipmen, I just want us to keep an eye on them because I don't want, all of a sudden it's like the SEALs. They're going to sneak up on us. We're not going to see it coming, and then just all our talks about the group of 5 are just going to disappear.
You never can tell in this crazy world of college football. So
exactly.
it'll be there's still a lot of football to be played as we hit the halfway point of the college football season. All right, that does it for basically our jibber jabbering by ourselves. We're now going to dive into our first interview segment on Beyond the Mic. We're excited. Earlier this morning, we had a chance to speak with the legendary voice of the Texas A&M Aggies and Andrew Monaco. So John has a great relationship with him. Andrew was the broadcaster I had the privilege of going up against for my first game as voice of the Bearkats 3 years ago. We had an awesome time with him this morning. So why don't we just dive into the interview right now here on Beyond the Mic?
Well, it is my honor. It is my privilege to introduce somebody who I consider not only a mentor, but a dear friend of mine. Carlos, I know you've gotten to work next to him in different booths before, but welcome to the podcast. Our very first guest. Got to start with the best. Andrew Monaco, thank you for joining us.
It is an honor to be here, partner. Carlos, wonderful to see you, my friend. And again, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Now, this is where I try to be glib and say, so now all your guests from here on out can only be better, right? If you're starting this way. No, I'm wishing you all the best with this for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Andrew, we call it Beyond the Mic, and because we want to share kind of not just our takes, but the sports profession. So how did you get into broadcasting? Because everybody has their story, whether it's being asked to fill in one time and you're just kind of handed a microphone, or you knew somebody that knew that you like to talk. But yeah, how did you get started in the sports broadcasting world?
It actually, the inkling of it is in high school. We had a teacher, Robert Metzger, had worked at NBC in the 60s. And when he started a television class, which was under English in high school, he was able to acquire old equipment from NBC when they upgraded. I still don't know how he did it, but he did. So the stories of him working on all those old shows as he put a studio in high school, and you learned we would put together a newscast, but it would be all the aspects of it: audio, video, how to run camera, how to write news. Fascinating class. And it kind of piqued my interest. And over the course of that, not realizing at the time, but looking back, he would also bring in people from the industry, whether it was in Philadelphia, whether it was in New York. And it would be New York a little bit later, but Pete Silverman was a director, and Mike Emmerich came in and spoke to our class. And I have no idea if anybody else in that class got out of that what I did, because Mike had just been at Prism, which was, it would be the early cable for the Flyers and the Sixers, now NBC Sports Philadelphia. But then Pete Silverman I would work with later in my career. It was kind of, I don't want to say full circle, but it was a whole lot of that circle there. But it was because of Robert Metzger that allowed me to go to Maryland as he kind of shaped, okay, what do you want to do? I have kept in touch with him, which is also an honor. And then just those opportunities to be on the air. Did not think TV at first. That was not my idea. And that was, John, what you had said early. Is it an opportunity of, handed the mic? I learned later that my first time in television was because someone had dropped out and they needed someone. And I had been working with Sunshine Network on their radio side early in my career in Orlando, and I was with the Magic. And then I left the Magic to go do baseball, minor league baseball. And it was during that period. But someone was not able to do a Saturday college basketball game. That was the entry, and took advantage of that. So there were kind of a couple of tracks for me, that radio track, that TV track, but it was definitely knowing that, the play-by-play track. When I got out of college, I was hoping to be just a sports anchor. So I was looking for places that had a lot of teams. Obviously, having gone to Maryland and they were still in the ACC, you're looking at ACC schools because you're familiar with it and those markets. And then the opportunity more and more went from, was a sports anchor, actually was a sports anchor. My first job in Orlando, my first job's in Washington, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, rewind even more. Atlantic City, New Jersey, then Washington, Pennsylvania, and then in Orlando. Christopher Russo used to work at the station in Orlando. He then goes to New York, and that's where his career takes off. Yep. Going with Mike and Mike. But Mark Daniels, who is still there and doing a talk show as well as UCF, He was doing the talk show. I was hired to do the morning sports. Well, it's about 6 months in, and the Magic need a broadcast host. They had gone to Bud Sports their first year. They need a host, and I'm like, okay, it was our flagship station, so we talk with them. And I learned later that Jack Swope, our VP of the Magic, one of the things that helped me, and this is part of advice, is he said, we listen to you every morning, and my kids love you. Thomas and Andrew Swope. And I'm like, okay, this is good. The advice is someone's always listening.
Yeah.
Someone is always listening. And if it's not someone out of that speaker in their earphones, you know who's listening? You. You have to be happy with what you're doing. But that was the thing. So that helped me get to be a host from there. I actually jumped to minor league baseball because we were going for an expansion franchise at the time. Pat Williams had asked if I would do baseball, and I was sharing baseball with David Steele and Chip Carey. Chip was doing TV for the Magic, David doing radio, now doing TV, and he's in the Hall of Fame there and a huge influence on a lot of us in Orlando. And that allowed me to go a little bit more on the talent track, allowed me to freelance a little bit. And then when I went back to the Magic, I went as talent and I got to do more TV freelancing with the Magic. I was doing more NBA games on TV because my good friend Dennis Newman, who had replaced me as host, stayed on the radio side. I couldn't lose at that moment, so I was able to do some TV, and that helped me do that. But that was the introduction, and wasn't sure where to go. And what to do, where, and you never know where it's going to take you. But that was the early part. But it really goes back to Robert Metzger and his TV class and his, I'm going to say, creatively acquired. It may have been all above board, but I mean, he had those big old cameras in that studio
Yeah.
that he had built, and it was an English class. And again, able to talk with him. We did closed circuit games, and by closed circuit for high school, we did them onto a big old. But if you remember, it's like, well, it might have been 3/4 inch tape machines, if I remember correctly. It's well before beta. It's well before VHS. But we would just wheel that monitor with the tape. You remember what it was like when you had a sub and they brought the movie in?
Oh, yeah.
It was even bigger. And we would do the games directly onto those reel-to-reels. So we weren't doing all of them. But I think it was that taste. And then it became, okay, what do you want to do? And working with a counselor and stuff like that. So always aware that it was something that I wanted to do. And I really give him a ton of credit. And then with the people that you work with in college, and then the other people that you work with, it's so hard to tell someone who's in college right now about networking because sometimes you want it immediately, but it doesn't always work that way. It could be a little bit later on in your career where those paths cross, but very fortunate to have the directors of broadcasting that I have had, and aligned very much with how they liked games to be called, and very fortunate to be around people who care about, as you guys do, the craft.
Absolutely. I'm going to say one thing that's always stuck out to me, and I know I've mentioned this to you time and time again, is not only do you give the advice to the young broadcaster. I mean, I think every time I go into the booth at Olsen, somebody's in there and you're sharing advice, but you also are you let them be hands-on. You're always so good about giving that opportunity to this next generation of broadcaster. That's always stuck out to me about as something about you is that you really are trying to give back to the next generation, and guys like me and Carlos who are just starting out, and we're on the high school circuit where we're going to gyms that we don't know if we're going to have a power outlet next to us, or guys that are in the smaller group of five or FCS schools like Carlos was still is. So that's something that's always just stuck out to me in that role. But how did you get from Orlando to being the voice of the Aggies?
Uh,
Because that is, I'm sure, an odyssey and a journey that a lot of people would like to hear.
Orlando. So go through. As I said, I left them and came back. I left the Magic, but we had bought a minor league. We had bought the Orlando Twins at the time, and they became the Orlando Sunrays, and then the Orlando Cubs. So went through that sale, if you will, in the off season, but worked with both of those organizations. Uh, I was a Tribune employee for a little bit. But because the Magic had bought the Double A again with the eye on the expansion that would go to the Marlins and the Rockies, jumped at that opportunity. And when you have Pat Williams ask you something, if you know the GM of the Magic and passed away just recently, and I always joke with Pat that cancer picked the wrong one because he beat it. I did that and thinking that might be the future. When I go back to the Magic, because the Cubs then go, I don't stick around when the Rays buy them. I jump back as a producer and TV for our out. Excuse me, I speak for a living. Our IHL franchise. Anyway, being back in there, back as a host, back doing the TV for hockey. That's going on, filling in when David Steele went to Florida because Sunshine Network had a neat package at that time. Breakfast with the Gators, primetime Knowles, nighttime on Sunshine. So they would actually have extra cameras for their network games, repackage them with David would do games with receiver Nat Moore. At Florida State, Paul Kennedy was doing it with Keith Jones. I would fill in for Paul on some of those games. And I had the UCF games with Charles Davis. Okay. So you talk about, again, that the good fortune of that. David would leave. That would allow me to do the Magic games. Again, getting into more TV. And then through the Orlando Solar Bears and the IHL, being part of their Fox had Sports Channel earlier, but I never worked with them. Fox would then have their IHL game of the week, and I got on that package as a sideline guy. Anyway, TV starting to go more and more with that. As that's going, the IHL goes away. The Solar Bears go away. The Orlando Miracle go away. That we started the WNBA in 99. And I'm now looking like, okay, I'm not sure I can stay here. Everything that I had been doing, Magic, Solar Bears, and Miracle, two of them are going away. And we actually went through Mr. DeVos, Rich DeVos, thought about selling the team and changed his mind and kept it, but shedding those properties. And there was the thought that the team might move as well. Mm-hmm. So San Antonio's the same thing is going on, though. They are bringing on an AHL franchise. They are bringing on a WNBA team. And I happen to get in touch with them and say, look, this is what I'm doing in Orlando. And fortunate for me, I get the opportunity to do that. But I'm going there with the Rampage as radio. I'm not involved with the Spurs at all when I do that. It's going to be with the Rampage and with, at the time, the Silver Stars. Brian Anderson is doing sidelines for the Spurs. He then goes to Milwaukee. So there's one spring where I have Rampage Hockey and I'm doing the home games as the sideline guy just to fill in for what's going on. That happens, and then I go over to the Spurs full time, still moonlight a little bit with the hockey, but stay with the Spurs. And then I'm up at Fox and I get a call from John Heike, who GM at Fox, then comes to Texas A&M. So there's my connection to John. And John says, Texas A&M is going to open. Would you be interested? And I said, yes. Now I'm on my way to walking to the studio. As you could probably guess, I was getting coffee. So that's been part of my career. I'm walking to the studio and I stop in the hallway and I'm like, John, yes, absolutely. What's the process? And find out what the process is. And he helped me very much in that process. He's helped me to this day for sure. And going through that, wasn't sure I wanted to give up the TV part. I really wasn't. That's where I thought that I was chasing that and the freelance opportunities on TV. And you talk about the networking. I'd gotten to San Antonio, and a good friend of mine, Dave Olmstead, had worked at Sunshine Network, started a new network. He started Comcast in Michigan and could not get Paul Kennedy, and he was honest about that. Couldn't get Paul, who they had worked with. They started Sunshine Network in Florida together. And I'm doing a package of Mac games, TV game of the week. He got a TV game of the week for them, and he did some hockey as well. So I'm going there from San Antonio, so that freelancing opportunity there, talking with other teams, able to do the D, now G League for Versus, and then when that went to CBS Sports Network. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's the path I'm going to take, but not when Texas A&M opened. I'm like, no, this. I joked with Dave South. This job opens every 33 years. I wish it had opened sooner because I'm having so much fun.
Yeah.
So I jumped at that. But that was a consideration. But to me, there aren't many jobs like this one. So when it opened, I took that opportunity, and very fortunate to get hired. So that's what got me here. Yeah, it's funny, the places I've been. So, from Maryland to Atlantic City as board op. Never did overnights there, but mornings. And then we had a talk show. So Jim Wise was my sports director, and he was also PA for the 76ers. So when he would go to Philly, we would have a talk show that basically went from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, or 6 o'clock to whenever that game started. And back then, most games started at 7:30. So there's a little bit of a talk show before the show that we were carrying, whether it was the Sixers or the Flyers, on Sunday the Eagles, but we didn't have a talk show, and the Phillies in the summer. But he would go there, so that would be the hands-on that I could host that show. And then when the Flyers were playing, I would run up to Philadelphia and get sound for our news and sportscast the next day. A lot of fun to be there because it was a good market for Philadelphia sports, and that's where I thought that's where I thought that's why I said that's where I thought it was going to be on that track. And then being introduced to TV, that track, like I love both crafts of radio and television, where radio is very much, I'll use us, and color is important, but I think TV is more driven by color, depending on who, by how good that person is. And that person's really good. Like I've joked with Sean Elliott, Sean, you're going to get me my next job. And it's true. You're more of a narrator on TV as opposed, but either way, you're a storyteller. It's not your story.
Yeah.
Biggest problem I think with young broadcasters, but I don't say it in a mean way. You want to be the story, but in this business, you're not the story. The story is happening on the court, on the field, on the ice, on the track. That's the story. But you want to stand out, so you still need a personality. The hard part as a young broadcaster becomes, what does the person I'm sending my link or my tape to want to hear? And you can't possibly craft it to each individual director of broadcasting or whomever. That's hard. So all you can do is be yourself.
Yes.
So when someone sends me a tape, it's, look, I'm going to listen to it two ways. As a listener or as a viewer, if it's a link for TV, but also as a director of broadcaster, would I hire you? That's also a very interesting track that it is. And you can't be anybody but yourself. And there are going to be times where both of you, you're going to go for jobs and it's going to be someone else. And you're going to say to yourself, man, I could do that. The answer to that is yes. But not in that opportunity, that they chose someone else. But you can only put out who you are. You can't fake it because at some point it's going to come around to the true colors will come. But that's the hard thing. And you don't always know that until you're working with that director of broadcasting. And then you realize the reason why I was hired was we think along the same lines. Both my bosses in Orlando and San Antonio, John Cook, who just passed away, and he was so instrumental in my success in TV. We worked together, Magic, Solar Bears, and then freelance together and he was just a driving force in what he liked. And he was, for lack of a better phrase, a less is more guy. Mike Kikarillo in San Antonio is a less is more guy. I'll never forget him saying, I loathe screaming. It's always stayed with me. It's not good radio. It's not good TV. You know, that's the thing. But those were my bosses, and you have to keep them happy, and you've got to keep the owner happy, and you learn the relationships that you must make with coaches. It doesn't matter how many years I've been in the business. Mike Elko's the head coach of Texas A&M football. I've got to earn his respect. Now, I think there's respect that goes both ways. Please don't get me wrong. Bucky McMillan, I've got to earn. It doesn't matter what the 6 years I did with Buzz or the 1 year with Billy Kennedy or the years I did with Greg Popovich. Now the relationship is Bucky McMillan, able to do that with Michael Early with baseball. But that's on us as broadcasters to earn that trust. Another bit of advice I will pass along. I've never forgotten. Phil Roof, 1992, Orlando Sunrays. If you ever betray my trust, I will kick you in the balls. I've never forgotten that one either.
Yeah.
But it's true because of the roles that we are in, and trusted roles as well. And for all of us, your voice is your signature. No one else can't say, oh, no, I didn't mean it. Your voice is your signature. And there's a lot to that. As voice of whomever, that's the audience that you're trying to serve. But that's why I say someone is always listening. I'm sure you guys get, wow, thank you so much, whether it's a parent. My thing, when I first started doing college for Fox, and one of the joys was working with Shea Walker, Aggie wide receiver. We would do high school games in San Antonio, and we did some Texas State games at the time for Fox Southwest. And it hit me at the time that because it's a Fox broadcast, Texas State or Madison High School taking on O'Connor High School, relatives, parents, grandparents, they're going to be watching. You can't say that players' hometown for a college game enough, especially in the state of Texas. And they're all over the state of Texas. And in high school, I'm asking both coaches, and fortunately doing Madison, I've known Ron Ritteman. Our kids grew up together. Ron, I just need a little bit more. What are they studying? What do they want to be? What school might they go to? But for the kids who, for those football players who aren't, are they going to be something like that? So can you tell a little bit of a backstory we all know he just ran for 15 yards. That's when it really hit me that, okay, here's the background that if it comes up, can you be prepared for that? And then, to me, that was important, that whether it's Liberty Ilo or whether it was, the San Antonio kid will always be a little special. Kellen Mond is always a tad special. Watched him play throughout high school. And you guys are going to find that. There's going to be the relationships that are starting now and will continue. But that was important to me, and understanding who the audience is. So when I work with Dave now for football, the audience that's the Aggie audience. We're still fair to the other team. Please don't get me wrong, but the audience is Aggies tuning in for that. And those are the stories. So I'm appreciative that after every Thursday practice, Mike Elko, we can ask him anything. Now, you may not hear anything on that Saturday, but we have the understanding of what's going on. So to be able to go out to practice at any time, to have that insight and just that understanding has never been lost on me. And that I've been able to do that with assistant coaches and head coaches with the teams. As you guys know perfectly, position coaches can't talk about their kids enough. They love those. It's funny, you get arranged for the head coach, and Charles and I always did this. It was like, man, I can't wait to get to a position coach, because the head coach will give you what you want. And producers will always say, hey, talk about the meeting on Thursday or Friday whenever you did do that. That still lasts to this day. But man, when you get a position coach on the field and you start talking about his guys, man, the eyes light up. It's the same thing of doing Olympic sports at when I was with Sunshine. I'm doing a women's soccer game between UCF and Florida International. I'm doing volleyball, and those coaches can't talk about their girls enough.
Yeah.
And those young ladies, like all this information, I'm like, I am overloaded, right? If you take the opportunity and then get a chance to tell those stories. That's to me the fun part, because a lot of stuff you have at your disposal as you go higher in your career. Like, you guys know, okay, all I need is a roster. I just want a roster. Can you give me a numerical roster? I don't need an alphabetical roster right
Just-
now. Or wait a second. Wait, this one. When it's separated by class, senior, junior, some, right?
oh,
And now, and now in the old days in the NBA, it was, oh man, when they had fax back, when you could get the other team's game notes via fax, and they'd all be on the floor because it would be over. And now you click a button and there's so much more there.
yes.
But everybody has that. So how do you make it stand out? What does the number mean? What's the story behind the number? And what's the story behind the player if you have it? That's again, that's all part of the craft. Not just getting the story, how do you tell it? When do you tell it? What's the good time? And I think I've been fortunate being in the host role and the sideline role and doing a little bit of color, but the play-by-play role and understanding the dynamics, because that's the team within the team as well. Carlos, if you tell a story, I say this, I've said this about Sean Elliott time and time and time again. When Sean told a joke, I'm funny. People think I'm funny. But if I have a nugget and you have a nugget, and Carlos, you tell that nugget, awesome. The story got out there. I don't have to tell it. And that's where I was really fortunate with, hey, I've got this story on the sidelines. And as I'm waiting to tell the story and come to me, Bill Land may have said something, but Bill was so good. For more on that, here's Andrew, because he knew instead of taking that. Other broadcasters, okay, what's mine? Then it never really flows. It doesn't sound like 2 or 3 people getting along. And you understand that sidelines is a very complementary role. There's certain things that you have to do. Like I said, I could have 7 pages of notes for this game. And the moment Tim Duncan turned his ankle, they all go out the window because that becomes what? Give me an update. Do you have an update? But the day you don't prepare is the day there's going to be, I don't know. Let's say a bat flying around AT&T Center and you get delayed, like we had. You have the rain delay, or you have something. That's the day that it comes back and bites you. But I think that preparation will never ever do you any harm. The worst thing that happens, never got to use it. Maybe you'll get that team again, and you do get a chance to use it, rather than trying to shoehorn everything in. Real quick, Dave Neal tells me a story. First game he's doing, Ernie Johnson Sr. Bob Neal can't come back from an NBA game, which Dave thinks that Bob did this on purpose to give him a shot to do the Braves. Anyway, Dave's all prepared, right? And the game is on. First half inning, boom, 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 boom. He's getting it in, right? Boom. Half inning comes. Ernie Johnson Sr. looks at him and goes, you might want to spread that out. Pace yourself, son. Dave was like, I used everything in that first half inning. Here's another 8.5 innings to go. And Ernie Johnson Sr. goes, pace yourself, son. And it's a great lesson. And we all have to go through it. You know what I mean? Like we all have to go through it. It's not fatal, but it just makes us all better being able to go through it and even have stories like that.
Absolutely.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Andrew. All right, we're going to step aside and take a quick break talking to Andrew Monaco, the voice of the Texas A&M Aggies. More with him after this on Beyond the Mic.
Country music is different than other music genres. Our artists sing about family, friendship, the ups and downs of this old world, and living this life. Country music tells the story of us. 101.7 KSAM is your hometown radio station, playing today's best country and all your favorites. And you can have this hometown connection right there on your smartphone with the all-new KSAM mobile app. It's in your iPhone and Android app store right now. And we also have direct links on our website, KSAM1017.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on the Beyond the Mic podcast, talking here with the voice of the Texas A&M Aggies and Andrew Monaco. Andrew, again, appreciate you joining us today. I wanted to delve into this side of it. You touched on it a bit in our last segment, but I went through it this year for the first time as a broadcaster. Coaching and, players, especially in the modern era of college athletics, it's a revolving door. It feels like at times. Just talk about that importance of being able to cultivate those relationships with coaches, and players from the broadcasting perspective, and how it just helps you be a better broadcaster at the end of the day.
I think, Carlos, it helps as you know, John, you know this. Can you be there? Can you be seen? Even if you don't ask anybody a single question, are you out there at practice? And the one thing I like to do with when Buzz Williams was here was if he had that 5:30 practice, guess who's showing up? I'm going to do that. I'm going to be there. Can you be seen? And then there's something about, like, we don't need to have all the answers. Like, you don't have to tell a coach how much you know. I guess it's part of me of saying you have the job. There's no other level to go now. You've got it. You know what I mean when I say that? Like, with that team, you have it. And then I think by being there, and then when you do get those opportunities to talk with players, or the opportunity of them to listen to us and understand a little bit, or maybe their parents may say something, girlfriends may say something, boyfriends may say something, depending on the sport, grandparents, stuff like that. Again, it's being who you are. But I think being around, asking good questions, I think curiosity is still there, and listening. I think listening, like I think we've all talked about this, is it's great to come in prepared. Like, I never have a problem. I was like, oh, should I write my questions down? Yeah, you should. You should write them down and know where to go. But listen, because this conversation, this interview may go in an entirely different direction, and go with it, because the best thing that we can do as broadcasters and interviewers is make the other person comfortable. And when they're comfortable, I think that's when it's good. It's interesting, and not to toot my own horn, that twice I had two podcasts at Texas A&M, and both I've used the same name. Well, besides the one that's named after me, because I'm an egotistical person. The first one that I did when we sat down with players, I was like, look, this is what I want to do. And I just want to have a relaxed conversation with them. Well, we've gone with conversations. The first one I did, and now that we're doing it with football players, and we'll continue it with basketball and baseball, since those are the sports that I do. That's what I want. I just want a conversation. And this fall, it's really not about the games themselves. It's a little bit more about them. And then the burden is now on us to find out some information to make them relax. People love to talk about themselves. So, okay, and no matter who it is, can you do a little bit of research, talk with people who know them about something they might really like, whether it's a hobby. It could stay just on football, but here's now an opportunity to find out a little more. And when you sit them down and do that, and they come through and they say, man, that was really good, and they get a chance to see it after it's posted, Carlos, I think that's where I think it's almost like a cycle, but that cycle has to begin with us being there, and then you prove yourself time and time again. That's just the way it is. But by doing that as often as you possibly can, good questions, listening to the answer, not waiting for the mouth to stop moving so you can say something, I think that helps with the relationships.
Andrew, and just kind of bouncing off of that, you've gotten to be a part of so many special moments at Texas A&M, both ones that are special because they're joyous and they're full of victory, but also some bittersweet moments. How do you tell that story of the season? Because in that moment, I know for me, especially in my broadcasting career, I had to call my little sister's last softball game at my alma mater at College Station High School.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was one of the best teams in the program's history. So I'm trying not to,
Cry.
let somebody that I have a deep emotional connection
Yeah.
to, where obviously I'm sad that it's over, but also paint the picture of the whole season. 2024 Texas A&M baseball, for example.
Yeah.
Last year with Aggie basketball, Wade Taylor gets his jersey retired. He becomes the all-time leading scorer. And then, they fall in the tournament in a heartbreaker, where it just kind of slipped away at the end. For a young broadcaster, what's your advice on going about that? Because we're all going to be there where these teams that we're so invested in come up short.
Make sure you work with John Thornton. It helps you big time.
Yes.
You talk about someone that helps when it comes to basketball. I think it comes down to, for all of us being around that team, I think it's never easy to capsulize it at the end of a season, but you have an idea. And I'll stay with Dr. Thornton, who I adore and has helped me immensely here at Texas A&M. Non-conference, conference, postseason. It's almost like you have different stages, and you can have a big game in the non-conference, and you can have big game in the conference. But as that season goes along, to me, this is where we as broadcasters and team broadcasters, teams are films. Sports talk is snapshots. We get to watch the film play out. Now, we don't know the ending, but we get to watch it play out. It's a lot of times you will hear me reference, hey, teams get better over the course of the season. No game, unless it's a game 7, is a must win. I'm sorry. It's just not. But that's what we've done in the sports talk microwave society. Gotta win on Saturday. Well, technically you don't. We want to, right? Unless it's game 7. Unless it's a deciding game. That's must win. And I think we get to step back and see that picture and see it develop as the season goes on. And when it ends, you step back and you say, wow, every season is special. Every one. They may not go the way you want. Every season always goes too quickly. I say it every year. Man, this season went quick. But you have an opportunity to do that. And when you have a partner, when you can share back and forth in the post game what it means, and then you get on the plane and you're like, oh, I should have brought that up. Oh, I forgot to bring up that one. So if you have a chance to do something postseason, but that immediacy, like it's hard to be in Denver and see that basketball season come to an end. That's hard, but you got to still tell the story. Now, it is joyous in the 7th overtime against LSU. It's joyous when number 1 Alabama goes down. And you look at a couple times, this has happened a couple times. John, you'll remember the game. The comeback, South Carolina, not this year, where we had the 2 grand slams, the one prior.
Yes.
So I'm working with Coach Mark Johnson. Brett Minnick hits the grand slam to walk it off. You hear him giggle in the highlight. But when I turn to him afterwards and post game, when I'm talking with Brett Minnick, Coach has tears in his eyes. I got the next question, Coach. You're fine.
Yeah.
That's how much it means. Again, that's when it hits you. Like, it's a moment. We all know when it's a moment. And all of us go, don't mess it up. Less is more in that case. But I'm a less is more guy. Dave Elmendorf did the same thing. Like, there was the win, and he was just so proud that Aggie was so proud of that team on the field. He was speechless. I joked with him. I'm like, you're never speechless. But he was.
Yes.
And that's also part of the moment that becomes extremely personal as broadcasters. That's when it is, like, that moment in that booth is about us. It's still about Brett Minnick now. Please don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget how, I love working with Coach Mark Johnson.
One of my all-time favorite people.
Absolutely. And then for that moment to play out in front of you. And I have been spoiled with the number of big games or big moments here. I absolutely know this. There's no guarantee you get any of these.
Yeah.
And again, what's the important part? I'm thrilled because I'm attached to it. But Wade Taylor getting the number retired is about 4. You know what I mean? And you can't lose sight. But to be able to be a part of it, that's special. It's not lost on me. And Dr. Thornton and I have talked about this. If there is a moment that comes up, he'll text and say, there's another one, because we've talked about it, and I'm very grateful to get to be a part of all of these.
Well, and you bring up those moments, but when A&M hit those 2 grand slams in the game we got to do together, and Hayden hits the first one, and then Caden comes up with the bases loaded. You just knew It was
You
gonna
just
happen.
knew.
But you can't sit there and say
No,
it.
no.
But I remember he hit it, and off the bat I knew. And in my mind, you and my dad have always taught me silence is a good thing. But I knew if I said anything, I was just gonna be the track star that's out of the blocks right onto their face. And so I was just like, you know what? This is, I'm just gonna get to sit here and enjoy being a part of this. I want to
I
look at
joked
the
with Hayden.
fans.
No one's going to remember the first grand slam in that inning,
Yeah, no, and
but
nobody's
it
gonna
is Hayden's
remember.
shot, so we will.
Yeah, Hayden Shaw
Oh,
will,
he'll
will
remind
make sure
us.
people remember. He'll say, I'm part of the best trivia question is who hit the first Grand Slam
Yeah.
to beat South Carolina?
I think in young broadcasters, John, and this is the thing, like the first time we went to Omaha in 22,
Mhm.
Louisville, and Troy Claunch throws to first. Celebration ensues. I turned all our mics off and it was just the crowd mic because you can't compete with Bluebell at that moment. It says everything. And even if someone had just put that game on then, that's all you hear. It's the same thing I said a long time ago. Don't try to compete with a goal horn. Plus, it gives goal is scored in hockey. You know the goal horn is coming. It gives your color person as well some time to collect thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You can't beat that moment. And every great moment, even on radio, and this is what young broadcasters do, they feel like they have to talk and make the moment bigger. No, no, no. Let the moment play out. Even on radio, you can do that. Historically, Vin Scully's call of Hank Aaron's 7:15 is amazing because it's over a minute of, we call it silence. It's not. It's Fulton County Stadium. Now the reverence for Hank Aaron. And then he collects his thoughts and says what he says and nails the moment. You think about Scully's call of 88 of Gibson, right? And again, TV different. But think about Jack Buck. We all remember, I don't believe what I just saw. But do not forget that Jack Buck sums it up that the Dodgers win that game 5-4. He doesn't forget the score. Those are the things that when you talk about influences, that's what becomes important. But Caden Kent hitting a grand slam and the roar of the crowd, you can't beat it. Let those moments play out. And when you have crowds like that, now if you're dealing with not having a great crowd, I get it, but I still believe that silence makes that moment even more impressive. It's great advice from your dad, and Scott gets it. He's someone who has never talked over me, and I say that with so much respect. But I also put it this way: if he didn't get a chance to talk while we worked together, then I think you're constantly trying to get in there because I'm comfortable, and he's so freaking good. But I think that's the rhythm of a broadcast. There's a rhythm and a pace to the broadcast for us as play-by-play people, but you've got to have a rhythm with your partner as well. There are times that I could be looking this way on the court, and I know that John Thornton has something to say. That's just from working together. Or I know that he sees something. Well, guess what? If that ball's coming across half court, there's nothing going on. John, say what you see. And that's what I tell my partners. Say what you see. You don't need to know numbers. I need to know them. And I have them in front of me. I don't memorize. When you have that rhythm and that trust, I'm going to, as a color person, I'm going to be able to talk. Then I think that's why you don't have people stepping on one another. Because let's be honest, guys, when that moment happens, that's ours. It's why I hate the NFL. I hate NFL color guys stepping on play-by-play guys. That's not their moment. That moment can come later. It's not their moment there. It's one of the few times that I would ever say something like that, but that's our moment. And then we need to know to get out of the way to allow the color to do that. But if you're fighting for time, then I think you're stepping on one another more.
Well, and that goes back to the people. You said something, and it changed the way I look at the broadcast, and it changed how I sign off my broadcast now. I remember you told me the listener is inviting us into their home. We
You
don't get to
remembered
just
that.
barge in.
Yeah.
We're not just
Yeah.
barging in and setting up
Mhm.
shop and being like, you're gonna listen to this game.
Mhm.
They are inviting us and choosing us to come in. And so they're as much as part of that as the next.
Yeah.
As your color guy, as you. And so, you
You
know,
respect that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
when you give them that Olsen Field, or you give them that roar of the crowd after, a game-winning shot, that lets them be taken from their room or their car, wherever they're listening, to be at the place that they're asking you to take them. And
They're
so
there now.
that's
They are
that's
there.
why that's why I sign out all my broadcasts now. Thank you so much for inviting us in. I hope you do it again on next Friday.
That's awesome. That's awesome. They do. I can't go to your door and say, turn your radio on. I can't jam earbuds into your ears and say, you got to listen. You're invited. And what struck me is working in San Antonio and games that would be on Ken's 5. And I know it's changed a little bit more over the air now with the new deals. But when there was a game on Ken's 5, you would go over to a lot on the south side of San Antonio, and those tias and those abuelas, they were going to have Sean. So that TV was on Ken's 5 at 3, and the game was at 7. They were going to have Sean in their living rooms. That was their boy. You know what I mean? Like, he had played there, now he's on TV. And that struck me. I'm like, wow, they're not going to miss this. And the more I thought about it, they do. They invite. We are invited into ears, eyes, homes, cars, ultimately lives. There's a responsibility for that. And you learning that early I think will serve you well, and realize it is not, again, it's not always about us. Look, we're all egotistical. We all have egos, I should say. I shouldn't say egotistical. Yeah. But you have to serve that audience, and they have given you their time to respect that. Brilliant, John. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Andrew, I think one big thing that sometimes gets lost on young broadcasters is, going back to that, silence is good topic. It's ingrained into our skulls. I mean, I went through the mass comm department at Sam Houston State, and it was ingrained into us as DJs or even as broadcasters, like, you can't have dead air. And then I was taught much later that lesson of, like, some silence is good.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the good moments of being able to let the crowd, play a factor into the call, and you can just bow out for a second. But I think one thing I noticed, that even in the down moments, like, I'll take this for example, Sam Houston, their first year in Conference USA, they in basketball, in men's basketball, they run through the conference, they win the regular season title, they're poised to win the conference tournament. They get to the semifinals and had a huge lead at halftime, lost by 2 to UTEP at the very end. And I'm sitting there on the call. Jason Barfield's my color analyst. And after Sam has the last possession. They go up with it. It's off the heel. UTEP wins. That was my tagline. And then I bowed out for about 20, 25 seconds to let our audience take in the ultimately what was heartbreak. I was curious what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think it's very smart, Carlos, because in those 20 or 25 seconds, you may say something you regret. I just think it's smart. But you're that's also a moment. Not every moment is in a win. Now there's other times. There are other times. We've had games, right? Bottom of the 9th, on the road. So and so homers. Post game show next. Like, you just go right.
Send it.
It's like, we're done.
It's not what we wanted. Yeah. Post game show is next. But it is that moment, and you bring it in because, as I always say, the greatest unscripted show on TV or radio is sports, right? And it just played out, and it's not what you wanted, but when you have that is part of the atmosphere of the game. Yeah. To me, that's the right call. That's the right call. But in fairness, and I don't mean, everything, what is it? Forget everything before the but. That's your call, Carlos. That's your call. You're in control of that broadcast. That's your call. I truly believe you made the right one. And I think silence sometimes, and it's a great point because DJs on the radio, that is death. Dead air is death. I totally get it. And it's I guess silence is better than on for us as broadcasters, our silence, because if you have it mic'd up well and you have the effects, then it's not really silence. But I think that's the right call because unfortunately for Sam Houston, it's not the result, but for that atmosphere, for a broadcaster, that was the right call. And I think the right again, because you could say something, you could be mad at that moment. Because again, we're invested with the teams that we cover. But I think that was to me, that would have been a very good broadcasting call. And I think you can borrow from TV sometimes in that way. Just as TV's showing you what's going on in radio by backing off. Okay, here's the sound. Why? And then you can explain why it sounds like that and giving yourself that time because now they're hanging on your next words. Okay, why isn't Carlos talking? And then when you come back on, you've got 20 or 25 seconds to collect those thoughts, even if it is, hey, post-game show next. Okay, now we know. That's also a moment. And we have more moments than that than we think. It's not always game-winning shot. It's not always game-winning field goal. It's not always the walk-off. We have moments like that throughout broadcasts.
Absolutely. And like you said, we get invested in the teams and it's heartbreaking at the end of the day, but also at the same time, we got to be able to put a bow on our story and being able to, explain what just happened after that 25 seconds. Speaking of putting a bow, since we're going to be running short on time here, I want to put a bow on our time with you today. Again, we appreciate you taking time out of your
Thanks
busy
for having me.
talking with us. I guess the big thing would be just your advice to an up-and-coming broadcaster, whether they're just doing high school sports or, junior college, whatever it may be. They're trying to get their start. What would be your advice to them? I'm starting, even though I'm in just year 4 doing what I love. I'm starting to get here from students and like, hey, what do we do? What do we do? And I'm like, I haven't done it very long, but you've done this for a long time. What would be your advice to the up and comer?
Do it. Find an opportunity and an outlet to do the games. Get the reps. Talent is repetition. Repetition is talent. And I'm going to give you a phrase that I use, and I still believe, can I be better tomorrow than I am today? And once you have a perfect broadcast, guess what? You got to do it again, right? But can you be better tomorrow? Because Carlos, I could be listening to you. John, I could be listening to you, and you may turn a phrase or there's a rhythm to something that I haven't been exposed to going, oh, that's a really good way to do it. Or I could be watching somebody else. We all learn from one another, but you need those reps. You need to be in those gyms. You need to kill an hour because of a rain delay and talk to George Shinn, who's the owner of the Charlotte Knights. He also owned the Charlotte Hornets. That was my first baseball game on the road. An hour-long delay. The game was delayed at the beginning because they were still painting the outfield walls. They weren't even done with their walls. And then we had a rain delay. My first game was a rain delay. My first highlight in minor league baseball was a sac fly. My second highlight was a pass ball. I'm like, there's guys got to get better than this. But just do it. Learn from the mistakes again, because these mistakes aren't fatal at all. And if you can find that outlet, even if you have to practice on your own, do that to get an idea. Listen and understand. Don't copy someone, because when you try to copy someone, we already have the original, and that original has that. So that's the thing. That's not always the easy part, is to find that outlet, but the more games you can do, and I hate saying make the mistakes, go do it. See what it's like. See how difficult it is. What do you have to work on? All of that. And if you can find someone to be that, and for you, Carlos, talking to these students now, you can be that person to give the critique. John, you can be that person to give that critique. And again, tell them honestly, this is what I like. We don't have all the answers. This is what Andrew likes when I listen to something. And then work with them. And maybe that's where that relationship becomes established. And Carlos, maybe you can't help them immediately, but You have your ear to something. Hey, here's an opportunity here. Would you like it? Or here's this person. That's what we can do. But I really think the more that you can do and have that hands-on, as opposed to saying, oh, I can do that. Great. That's step one. Now, invest yourself and see if you can find that outlet to do those broadcasts.
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you? I know where they can find you on Saturdays in the fall,
Yeah,
but
I'll be at Kyle.
you know, where you mentioned this is time, plug your podcasts. It's a great
Conversations.
listen.
We just started Conversations. The Andrew Monaco show on Studio 12. That one's fun. That was really Andrew and Friends. I can't put it any other way. We started with Vern Lundquist. See, that's what I wanted to tell you guys. I got Vern. You got me. I win. I had Vern.
Yes, you do.
You do.
You got
There's
it.
no
That's why I
argument.
said it can only go up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Charles Davis, who I work with, and another one that I adore, Ron Thulin, but Shireen Williams, John Lopez, the connection to A&M somehow with broadcast. Brian Anderson, and John, I know you've listened to him, the three S's, right? Those are fun. But Conversations we have started with the players. We're going to be doing more and more social media with the players. Those are all on Studio 12. Andrew Monaco _SR senior, because Andrew Monaco Jr. took the other one. And so that's it for on X. But this is where I am proud to know you guys. And I know that we are in great shape in our business if you two are in it. And I really appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Man, just one of the all-time best broadcasters, in my opinion, one of the all-time best humans. So thankful for his kind words. And it's like I was telling you after we got done with that interview, Andrew has a way that, and it goes through his broadcasting, that whenever he is talking to you, that even though if he's broadcasting to thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, he makes you feel like he's just telling you what's going on.
For sure.
And so, just a real pleasure and honor. Again, thank you so much, Andrew. If you're watching right now, if you're gonna come back and watch, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, thank you again for joining us. But yeah, I mean, Carlos, just great interview, great guy.
Yeah. Poof, Justin's gone. No, he had to step out. But as we wrap things up here, awesome human being, and Andrew Monaco. We appreciate him taking the time to join us. Like I said, he was the first broadcaster, of the voice I'm up against, if you will, for lack of a better term, when I debuted against A&M, and couldn't have asked for a greater guy to be able to interact with in the week leading up to the ball game. I went on his and did a Zoom with him and talked about the game and stuff like that. And from that moment on, I was like, this is gonna be a guy I talk to for guidance and just to talk sports with over my career. And I actually had not seen him from that game against A&M until we went to Olson this last year with baseball. I hadn't seen him for about 2.5 years, so it was.
But he picks up just like that. Just
instant.
How have you been? How have you been doing? And I've been so blessed to get to know him through just being around A&M sports, and I'll never forget. We alluded to it in the interview. This past year in A&M baseball was a tough year, but one of the coolest moments he let me be a part of, all because I had just sat down. He didn't have a color guy in that Sunday game against South Carolina, and so I went and sat down by where the color guy usually sits, not to broadcast, but just so I could plug in my computer and have it charging and have other college baseball and college softball up on my computer while I'm watching the game. And it's after the top of the second inning. He just takes the headset and he puts it down and he says, "Hey, put this on." And I didn't even realize what he was asking or inviting me into at the time. I thought, "Oh yeah, I I'm down to here. So I had it up like I was a producer, and then he just kind of turns the microphone up on me,
Reaches across.
and just lets me know, hey, no, you're gonna talk. And so, he's so good about that and about mentoring this next generation of broadcasters and just letting me get to fulfill that dream. That truthfully, in that moment, if I never broadcast another sporting game again, I would have been fine.
Yeah.
Because growing up around this business, my dad being in this business, I'd always gotten to see him broadcast A&M baseball. And I always said that's something that I want to do. And so then I got to do it. And I would have been fine if A&M had just completely lost that game by 7 runs and just
Then
and blown it.
You call one of the
It would have been hard, but yeah, I would have gotten to live my dream. And so then to live my dream and get to do that in that game, man, always so thankful. So Andrew, again, thank you so much for joining us. Carlos, any final thoughts before I plug the new social medias and stuff we have?
No, again, Andrew, appreciate you. You have set the bar indeed for future guests, so we'll see who we can get. I think the only thing that could top him was probably Vern Lundquist. So
Yes.
and I doubt we'll be able to land that. So no, Andrew, we appreciate you. And just before you dive into the social media, coming up on next week's show, we'll have more college football to talk about. We'll have more NFL to talk about. Who knows? Maybe more coaches are going to be fired. God forbid that doesn't happen, but you never know. You can't tell in the modern era of sports. And by next week, we could potentially have a World Series matchup. So you never know. I think NLCS kicks off tonight. ALCS Game 2's tonight. So we're going to keep our eyes peeled on that one, and then we'll be able to delve back more into our local coverage as well between Huntsville, Sam Houston, and Navasota. So that's all coming up on next week's show.
Yeah, and you can catch that. We are now on Spotify, so if you go to our Twitter, which is Beyond TM Podcast, at Beyond TM Podcast, you can see we have a link tree there. We are on Spotify. It is Beyond the Mic Podcast on Spotify, and then Beyond the Mic Podcast on Apple Podcast as well. You may need to throw my name or Carlos's name in there, just because there are a couple Beyond the Mics, it turns out, that are inactive. So, but yeah,
We ain't.
We're not. We're here every Monday on YouTube. And then later on tonight, that will be live on Spotify and Apple Podcast. But give us a follow on X. Give us a follow. Subscribe on YouTube. Give us a follow on Apple and Spotify, and leave a rating so we can keep justifying why we get to sit here and talk about sports.
That's right. I mean, we love what we do, as we talked about there with Andrew, because at the end of the day, when it comes to this profession, if you don't love it, what are you doing? So you got to be able to love it, and that's what we love doing, talking sports and calling sports. So, but that'll do it for this week's episode of Beyond the Mic for John Clendenin and the now at home Justin Hardcastle. We wish you a great rest of your Monday. I got to get ready for Hornet Nation Coaches Show tonight, Chick-fil-A. It's going to be an awesome show. It's going to be on the KSAM YouTube channel going live at 7 o'clock. So hope you have join us for that. And as always, friends, have a pleasant tomorrow, and we'll see you next Monday.